Welcome into One of One Sports. So the last video I did on the channel was my version 1.0 of an NBA mock draft, and today we're going to be doing some deeper dives into some of the prospects we talked about. I'm going to be doing 5 of these before the NBA draft, one for each position, and today is of course the point guard, and I'll be talking about anyone I think is basically has a chance of being a first round prospect. Like the NBA mock draft video, I don't have scouting reports for international, so it's collegiate prospects only, and the top players will get more in-depth breakdowns of their skill sets. So getting right into it, we have 9 guys we're going to be talking about, starting with Cam Jones from Marquette at 6'3". All heights are rounded from the combine measurements. So what are we looking at in Cam Jones? Well, I think this is a guy who's really grown and is now pretty much an elite shot creator for himself, has really good finishing, and is grown as a playmaker. But this is a lefty guy who hasn't shown a great ability to use his right hand when driving. He's a great finisher with the left. Don't really see it right now with the right, and he really doesn't like to drive right based off the tape that I've watched of him at Marquette. And then the age thing, he's been there all 4 years, used all his eligibility. So he is more of a finished project. You kind of know what he is. There's not this like super high ceiling. He does seem like he has kind of maxed out as a player, which is fine because if you look at him at his start at Marquette, he played next to a guy who went first round in Tyler Coley. Tyler Coley ran the show as the point guard, was playmaking, and Cam Jones was his off ball shooting threat. And now he's shown he can be more than that. He has shot creation and playmaking ability, which does improve his prospects to me. And he has some defensive capabilities. The free throw percentage was not great, bit concerning, and the 3-point percentage has dropped down this year. But I do think that was just from like a harder workload and less talent surrounding him at Marquette. I think if this were a guy to go at like say 25 to the Orlando Magic, he's long enough where he's not going to hurt you defensively, and they have tons of defense on that team. He can shoot and he can create for others. A spot like that, he can be like a good backup point guard, in my opinion. He comes in at number 9. A guy with a bit of a higher ceiling, in my opinion. He's much younger, only a freshman, could still go back to college potentially. I do think he's going to stay in the draft, in part because of how good he was in scrimmages at the NBA Combine, arguably the best player in those scrimmages. So that's going to help him in the eyes of scouts. He comes ahead of a guy like Cam Jones for me because though they both have great shot creation, Todd Pettiford obviously younger, and I like his range a bit more. The downsides with a guy like Todd Pettiford is the size, right? Measuring at 6 foot, you're going to think that's probably going to lead to some defensive issues. And then the vision, sometimes he can't see over the defense. Sometimes he just has sort of tunnel vision. And when you're playing a guy at point guard, at least to be a starting point guard, you like him to have more playmaking ability for others. I don't really see a ton of that skill set in Todd Pettiford. Now, if I'm doing like a comp for a guy like Todd Pettiford, I think you could look at a guy like Peyton Pritchard, who he plays in Boston. He's a bit undersized, but he has so much shot creation ability and such deep range that in an NBA that now values 3-point shots more than ever, he secured a really valuable role as the 6 man on a team. And he's improved as a defender. He's still not great, but he's improved. And his scoring is just going to scoring and shot creation made him a very valuable player in this league. And Todd Pettiford has an abundance of that. So yeah, if he can be serviceable on defense, maybe not even good, maybe even slightly below average, he has enough scoring ability to me where he can be a nice off the bench player in this league, and he still has an ability to get better with the playmaking, as you've seen a guy like Cam Jones do, where he got 4 years to get better at it. Todd Pettiford still has all that time to grow as a point guard. So I like Todd Pettiford there at 8. At 7, LeBaron Philon. Maybe I'm a bit lower on him than some other people you'll see. He comes in at 6'3", and he is a really good point of attack defender, in my opinion. He's really crafty with the ball, finishing at the rim, getting by defenders, and he's good as an on or off ball player. At Alabama, Mark Sears there, who not included in this video, but could also be a point guard that gets drafted, really good shooter. Sometimes he had the ball in his hand, and LeBaron Philon was able to play off of him. Sometimes LeBaron Philon had the ball and could create by himself. I thought he was pretty good in both roles. Now, for the frame, he is a bit thin, but you'd expect him to put on some weight. The shooting stroke is a question. He was not a great shooter, but at the combine, it looked like positive signs of him growing to be at least a serviceable shooter. And then he's not the most athletic guy. Like usually, maybe not usually, but I feel like a lot of times the like one and done freshmen you see, like LeBaron Philon, you expect to have some sort of like crazy athleticism. He doesn't really have that, but that's where he makes up for it with the craftiness, in my opinion. I think you project this guy to be on the high end. Like I don't think he'll ever be Drew Holiday because of the strength aspect, but could he be like a Ryan Nemhard as a guy who's really good on-ball defender, has a little bit of creation for others, can knock down the three ball. I think he could be that type of player, and Ryan Nembhard has proven on the Pacers to be super valuable. So I think that's the kind of player you're hoping LeBaron Philon turns into. For me personally, I don't trust the shooting stroke enough at this point. And I don't like, although he's had projects to be a decent defender, I'm not sure I see elite defender in LeBaron Philon's future. And that's why I have him only at 7. And then Tyrese Proctor comes in at 6, bit more size than LeBaron Philon with the inch and height, but he also is just more developed physically. He's a junior, he's stronger. So his defense is also very good. And then the shooting is better than Philon. And that's really what makes him a better prospect, in my opinion. He does have his downsides, and I say low ceiling just because we've seen him at Duke for 2 years. Usually you don't make a big leap going to the NBA after that. And then he's not the most athletic guy in the world, and he lacks a bit of ball handling. And I think that's the biggest thing he needs to improve, because he has the playmaking ability of a point guard. And if he can just tighten that handle and have more confidence, then he can be a really, really good player. At times at Duke, they would press him, and then he wasn't the best at breaking that down and could get the ball stolen, things like that. If he can improve that and you have the handle, then I think he has the defensive capabilities, the shooting capabilities, and playmaking abilities to be this like Swiss Army knife type of player, sort of like a Derek White in Boston, just a little bit less athletic, won't be as good of a shot blocker. But outside of that, I feel like he's just a winning player who could do so many things. And if I'm a team with a late first round pick, like maybe even Boston, trying to find young guys to replace people so I can get under the second apron, right? Like I could see Boston taking a chance on Tyrese Proctor, seeing some of the defense, the 3-and-D potential in him. So I think he has a chance to go in the first round, and I think he should personally. I think most people you'll see, they won't have him as a first round prospect. I think when I make my final big board, there's a chance he's in my top 30. Now we get into my top 5 point guards in the class, and we have more in-depth breakdown. So Walter Clayton Jr., this is a guy who basically all his strengths are based off the shooting. If you watched him at Florida on the way to the national championship or throughout the season at all, just an incredible shooter. Probably I'll say top 5 in the class to be conservative, but he has an argument for top 3. And it's because his shooting can come in 2 ways. He comes, well, actually, really 3 ways. He can be a spot up shooter, he can be off the dribble shooter, or he can be coming off of like a screen catch and shoot guy. And that's why I mentioned the off ball movement as well. And it does sort of remind you, obviously, he's not the level of Steph Curry, but just Steph Curry does it. He runs around all the time, catch and shoot, or he can like leak out and Draymond kicks out to him, he'll hit it. Or obviously he's has enough ball handling ability to just create his own shot. And you see all of that in Walter Clayton Jr.'s game. The weaknesses are when you are a 6'2 guard like him, who's a good athlete, but not a great athlete and doesn't have great length, there are some defensive weaknesses. And he's also not, at least at Florida, that he was more of an offensively focused player. So at times there were defensive lapses. But if you watch the national title game, there were some key plays, including at the end of the game, he makes the defensive stop. So I don't think it's all bad there. And then the vision, I think, has been over a little bit over. I don't know how to play exactly, but people are overstating how bad of a playmaker he was. It was more so just they wanted to use him off ball. I think this happens to Steph Curry sometimes as well. Like Steph Curry's a good playmaker, but he's more effective running around all the time and not being a lead initiator. And I see some of that in Walter Clayton Jr. If you need him to do it, he can do it at a serviceable level. This is another team, another player I could see Orlando taking at 25, a team that just needs shooting, has defense to surround him. I think he's a great fit there. The questions would be about his age, 4-year senior. And then so there's 2 questions. One, is there any room left to grow? On that front, I would say probably not. But the other question is the competition level. Was he just benefiting from being an older guy playing against a lot of players who are younger than him, and all the players on his level or his age are already in the NBA? That's always a question with older prospects as well. Personally, I'm not too worried about the age. I don't think he's going to be a star by any means, but I think he could be a really good backup point guard or like a lower level starting point guard who just gives you really good shooting and spacing on an NBA team. Coming at number 4, I have Igor Demin out of BYU, measuring in over 6'8", and the strengths are in his height and his court vision and passing. He has the ability to see over the defense at almost all times, and he's gifted enough at his size to be still able to handle the ball and play make for others. There are some turnover issues, but that's often the case for young point guards, and I'm not too concerned about that. And overall, in my opinion, the best passer in this class And when he gets going downhill, using his frame to be like somewhat physical, that's when he's really, really flashing the star talent. And obviously when his shot is falling. Now that is not a very common occurrence, and that is his biggest weakness to me. You'll see him compared to Josh Giddey a lot. I think that's a very fair comparison as this guy who has just this ridiculous combination of size, dribbling, and playmaking ability, but has weaknesses as a defender and as a shooter, specifically the shooting aspect for Igor Demin. I think he's okay as a defender. And then the other weakness is strength. He's just really thin right now, and he'll have to put on more weight to I think, be able to not just be bullied by more physical defenders in the NBA. And like I said, the turnovers are a question. The defense is a question. And overall, I think he's just a guy that is somewhat of a flyer right now. Like the talent is obviously there. You don't find many guys with his combination of size and playmaking ability. But if the shot doesn't come along, could he be like not Josh Giddey this year, but what we saw in Josh Giddey like in the playoffs in OKC, where you just can't play him because he's not making an impact defensively and he's just killing your spacing? That is a risk for a team that drafts Igor Demin. But if you're drafting him, you're also getting the chance like he becomes a 36% shooter in a few years, and he's just this guy who can space the floor, but is also just ridiculously good at setting up others and is just elevating everyone on the team around him. And yeah, that's something that I think is worth taking a shot on. And although I think Walter Clayton is a safer prospect than Igor Demin, and I think will be better early, Igor Demin's upside to me makes him the better prospect, because if you get Igor Demin, there's a chance you're getting a real star. To me, that's worth putting him at number 4. And I don't think he's going to go lottery. I wouldn't be like mad at a team if they do take him lottery. I expect him to go little like mid first round pick, but I don't think you often see the upside of a player like him taken in the middle of the first round. So there's potential for him to be a steal in this draft. Coming in third, a guy I think is going to get compared to Igor Demin a lot. And at first, I was team Igor Demin early in the season, but over time, I think Kasparas really showed he was on a different tier than Igor Demin. Not like maybe different tiers wrong, but he was clearly ahead. And most people had him ahead the whole time. I was just more of an Igor Demin guy. He has some of the similar strengths, like the size is there as a 6'5" point guard, not quite as big as Demin, but a little bit stronger. And then I don't think he's as good of a passer as Demin, but he's probably second best among these point guards in terms of playmaking ability. So yeah, another guy where you have this rare combination of size and playmaking. Maybe not quite as rare as Demin, but he makes up for it in being a better shooter than Demin, specifically off ball. He's not a great he's a good shot creator. He's not good at making those shots, right? So he can get the shot. He's just not good at making shots off the dribble right now. And you could see that it is games at Illinois, but you could also see it at the combine. He shot really well off like spot up drills, catch and shoot. But when he is off the dribble shooting, it's not really there right now. The problem with that is that when he is your lead initiator, he is often going to be taking shots off the dribble. And if those aren't going in, they can lead to major issues in efficiency, which can hurt the team. And at Illinois, they used him a lot. He had a really high usage rate. I don't know what it was exactly, but among freshmen, I know it was pretty high. And he took at times a lot of bad shots, with hurt his efficiencies. And then there's also some athleticism issues. Like he was positionally a good defender. Like he has the size, he has the length, he moves into the right spots. But at times athletically, the foot speed wasn't always there. And then I would say it more so hurt him with quickness getting by defenders. Sometimes it doesn't matter because he's just strong enough and big enough that a lot of point guards aren't going to be able to handle him anyways. But sometimes when you get a guy similar to his size, he just doesn't have the quickness to get by and instead resorts to a step back 3, which he's not great at. And then the other questions are with turnovers, even more than Igor Demin. This guy was a turnover machine at Illinois. I think a lot of young guards, like you're asking an 18-year-old to lead a collegiate offense in one of the best conferences in the country. I think the turnover problem will go away at some point. And then defensively, I think he's going to be, I don't think he's going to be a star defender, but I think he's going to be an average defender at the league. I don't think it's really going to hurt him. I don't see the star potential a lot of other people see, just because I think to be a star in this league at the guard position, you have to be a really good, tough shot maker. And I just don't see that in Kasparas Jakubonis. What I do see is a guy who's going to set up his teammates, run an offense well. And if you play him next to, say, Minnesota, I don't think he'll fall this far, but say Minnesota, I think picks like 16, 17 like that got him, right? And he's playing off Anthony Edwards, and he can space So like Anthony Edwards has the ball and Jacque Jonas is just there to knock down open threes. But if you need him, he's a secondary creator who could still play make for others. I think he could be really good in that type of role, even if I don't see him as an all-star. And yeah, I'm not sure he has the ceiling of an Igor Demin, but I think he's definitely safer and has at least close to the same ceiling because the shot is better, even if the size isn't as good. So Kasper Jacque comes in at number 3. At number 2, and this one is pretty easy for me. He's a clear-cut number 2 right now. That is Jeremiah Fears coming in at 6'3" out of Oklahoma, and he is from my home state of Arizona. And the strengths here are really obvious. The speed and quickness is ridiculous. He is the fastest player in this class. He showed his 3/4 sprint at the combine, but just watching him, the blow-by ability is ridiculous. And he's also a really good playmaker. Now, compared to like Igor Demin, Jacque Jonas, no, not quite that level. But still, to be a lead initiator in the SEC, who was the best conference in college basketball, and this is a guy who reclassified. He should still only be in college this upcoming year. He should have still been in high school. To lead that team to the tournament was really impressive to me, and he was still over 4 assists in college, which is pretty impressive. So he is definitely a good playmaker and a true point guard. The weaknesses, he's bad defensively. The second weakness is strength. Part of his reason for being bad at defense is he's just not strong enough and can get bullied sometimes. The other thing is sometimes he was just not engaged defensively, and part of that is just the offensive burden that he had at Oklahoma. And then the shooting question is like his efficiency wasn't good, but his free throw shooting is really high. And I didn't list it as a strength, but he gets to the line a lot. So it was not a small sample. He's really good at drawing fouls when he gets by people. And he made a ton of those free throws, like I think like 85% or something like that, maybe even better. So like I think the shot is actually good. He just had to take a lot of difficult shots at Oklahoma because he was, even as a true freshman, really by far their best offensive threat. So I'm not really worried about the shot. And then the ceiling question is just, do you believe he has a higher ceiling than these other guys? To me, I think it's obvious he has more scoring potential because I'm not sure Demin or Jacque Jonas have the ability to consistently get to the basket the way Jeremiah Fears does. I think it can be better finishers potentially because of their size, but the quickness Jeremiah Fears has is just so valuable at the NBA. I look at a guy like De'Aaron Fox, like Tyrese Maxey. The blow by ability, just something you can't teach or gain. And I believe in his shot just as much as Jacque Jonas is, definitely more than Demin's. He's going to be a good shooter who gets to the rim, gets free throws, and can be a 20-plus point per game scorer while playmaking for others. And I actually think Tyrese Maxey is a really good comparison because you see what he can do with his quickness and with the shooting ability. So yeah, Jeremiah Fears is a clear-cut number 2 for me. And the other thing about the ceiling is like, yeah, how much better is he going to be in like a year from now, right? When he should actually be in college, when he's stronger now, and the defense is a little better, and he's seen more basketball, so he's going to be less turnovers. Like all the other things are all the typical things young prospects have in terms of area to grow. He has even more because he reclassified as an extra year of growth. So I think that's promising as well. And it makes him the clear-cut second best point guard in this class, in my opinion. But number 1 is no doubt Dylan Harper. He is about 6'5", which this is a big point guard class because you look at Jacque Jonas, Demin, and Harper in this top 5, all 6'5" plus when they're going to be in shoes. That's pretty impressive. The driving ability is the best at the point guard position of anyone we've seen in terms of mixing the driving ability with the finishing, because Jeremiah Fears gets by people better, not the finisher of Harper. So Harper is the best when you put it together. And then the weaknesses, the pull-up shooting is not there right now. Like he's actually a pretty good spot-up shooter, similar to Jacque Jonas, but when asked to like come off a screen and hit the 3, not great at that, at least to this point. And then he's not really a true point guard, in my opinion. He's more of like a combo, but he's so good with the ball in his hands that he's still learning and applying point guard skills. So I think as he plays more of the position, he'll grow as a passer. But I've seen people compare him to like Cade Cunningham 2.0. Someone actually commented on one of my videos about that. And not saying I don't see any of it, but I think Cade Cunningham is clearly a better playmaker and has more playmaking ability than Dylan Harper. That really stops me from having Harper as like this A-tier prospect that it seems some people have him at. I still think he's great. Obviously, I think he's the best point guard in the class, but the playmaking is somewhat of a concern to me. And then I actually believe, I don't think the shot is too concerning. I believe in it enough to him to be a high level scorer. And then for questions, I think defensive upside is like, he might have star ability on defense. He's really long and he actually played really good defense at Rutgers in spurts at his time there. It was only 1 year and he was injured at points and it wasn't always great, but you could certainly see the defensive potential. And if he's going to be like this two-way point guard with his good size, good length, he's getting downhill and he's locking up, then you could really sell me on him being an A-tier prospect. I think he's going to be above average defender, but I don't think he's ever going to be like all defense. So I'm not sold on like a star defender. And then the impact on teammates thing is like Rutgers was really bad, even having Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. And I feel like as a point guard, you're supposed to elevate the team a little bit more, especially what you see what guys like Jeremiah Fears, Jacques Uchonis could do in similar high usage roles with not a ton surrounding them. So that was a bit concerning for me. Now, I feel like I was a bit too negative, so I just want to emphasize this is a really, really talented guy who has the potential to be a two-way point guard, who's going to improve as a playmaker, who already has great driving and finishing ability, is crafty with the left hand. There's a ton to love about Dylan Harper, and that's why he's the #1 point guard prospect in this class. Let me know what you guys think. How would you rank these prospects? What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe.